Hello guys, in today's video I'm going to be doing a ranking video where I rank a lot of F1 drivers in F1 history. You can see the list here, there's a lot of them. I'm going to go through them, I'm going to talk about their history, their careers, and then I'm going to rank them based on a number of factors. It's going to be basically my personal opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. I know there's going to be some controversial opinions, but that's fine. If you disagree, you disagree, and I can't tell you that you're wrong just because you disagree with me. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the video. This is obviously unscripted, so I would usually do a really long intro about some history of something, but we're not doing that today. Alex Albon. I'd go proper C tier. Solid midfield driver, very good in lower down cars. Obviously got smoked by Verstappen in 2020 and not 20. Yeah, he got smoked by Verstappen in 2020. Got smoked by him a little bit in 2019. It wasn't as bad in 2019 as it was in 2020. Early part of 2019 he was good. When he was in the Toro Rosso, had Kvyat as his team. No, he had Kvyat as his teammate. He wasn't much better than Kvyat, but I think the reason why Red Bull put him in that Red Bull was because they knew how good Kvyat was in a Red Bull. They wanted to see how Albon would be a bit better. They knew if they got Kvyat, he would probably be all right, but they wanted someone who would be that bit better, and they assumed that Albon would be that, and he wasn't. He's proven himself at Williams. He's a very capable driver, but in the overall grand scheme of things, you've got to think this is all-time tier list, so I'd probably put him in C tier. Because like if we're talking about 2024 drivers only, I'd probably put him in A tier or B tier, maybe hovering around that level. But it's all-time drivers, so I'll put him in C tier. Giovinazzi, I think, goes in D tier. He was all right, I guess. He was up against a nearly, during the last part, yes, it was a 40-year-old Raikkonen. Actually, yeah, he was 40, yeah. So he was actually turned 40 in the year that he joined Sauber or Alfa Romeo in 2019. And yeah, Giovinazzi never really showed he was that much better than him. He might have got a couple of more points here and there, and he also did the 2 races with Sauber in 2017. But it was just because Wehrlein got injured. It wasn't because he was a good driver, and he was a reserve, I think. Yeah, Giovinazzi wasn't that great, if I'm being honest. Again, showed his moments. He was quite good actually in qualifying. I remember in 2021, he got in Q3 in Monaco and in Zandvoort and a couple of other tracks, but overall, he was just like, he never really showed why he was in F1, and that's why he got dropped for Zhou, who had more money. Next one is Mazepin. Nikita Mazepin, well, he goes in E tier. I never use F tier in these tier lists because no one is awful. Like I would probably put Yuji Ide or Alpes, who I know are on this tier list, in F tier. But like, because Mazepin is just a mediocre paid driver. People call him the worst F1 driver of all time because he's the worst driver since 2018 or 2017 when all the Drive to Survive fans started watching F1. So they just assume that all history goes back to 2017 and that they can't think of anyone before that. But he's not the worst of all time. He was very shit towards the start of his rookie season or his only season. But towards the end, he'd started to at least get a modicum of decency. He wasn't spinning as often. He wasn't. He actually outperformed Mick Schumacher. I think in Brazil it was. He had a very good weekend that race. And I think Latifi goes in the same category as him. I think I also need to point out that what I'm going to do is the drivers on the further to the left. Oh, the camera's backwards for you. So the drivers further to the left are going to be better. So, for example, Latifi is better than Mazepin, so therefore I put him on the left for me. There we go. So that's another thing I'm doing for this tier list. So Latifi, again, another pay driver, nowhere near as good as Giovinazzi, because although Giovinazzi was mediocre, he wasn't as mediocre as Latifi. Latifi got smashed by Russell, got smashed by Albon, and got smashed by De Vries, and we know how bad De Vries was later on in his career. Lando Norris. Better than Albon. For the moment, I'd say he belongs in a tier above Albon. Although he's got no wins, which is what everyone kind of ribs him for not having any wins, despite being the calibre of driver he is, I think that he's going to get a win soon. Whether it be the next year, the next 2 years. If McLaren can produce him a good car, he is a race-winning calibre driver. It's just that the one time he had a chance to get a race win, he fucked it. And I think that's fair enough. George Russell. Um, same tier as Norris, but what do I put him ahead or do I put him behind? It's a tough one because obviously Russell has won a race, but I think overall talent-wise, I mean, it's also hard because Russell he had one bad teammate in Latifi, and then he had one good teammate, or world-class teammate in Hamilton, whereas Norris has had Sainz, Ricciardo, and Piastri, who are all very capable but aren't on the level of Hamilton. This is a tough one. See, if I could put them on top of each other, I would, but I'm going to probably put Norris ahead of Russell here. Carlos Sainz. He's been in F1 longer than these two. 9 years he's been in F1 now. And he's going to be leaving Ferrari at the end of this season, so Lewis Hamilton can go there. Very good driver again. I think actually I'm going to put him ahead of both Norris and Russell. I think that on his day he can challenge Leclerc, and Leclerc is a fantastic driver. Mick Schumacher, D tier, and he's probably in with behind Giovinazzi, because although Mick Schumacher was on his day again he was good. He got a 7th place for Haas in Austria in 2022. He was way too error prone to be a properly good F1 driver, which I think a lot of people don't realise. A lot of people, especially the Mick Schumacher fangirls on Twitter and Instagram, who are like 12 years old, saying that he was robbed by Haas and that Gunther Steiner deserved to be fired because he got rid of Mick. Like, no. Mick just wasn't the calibre that his dad was. And although on his day, he was amazing, when he wasn't on his day, he was crashing, and that cost a team that is very low on budget a lot of money. And that's what happens when you have a driver like him. If he'd have had more chances, if his dad had not had his accident, I think he could have definitely shown himself to be a better driver than he was, but that's all conjecture. Lance Stroll. He's better than these lot. He's not as good as Albon, though. I think we can all agree on that. Again, he's like Schumacher, except his peaks are higher and his lows are about the same. Lance Stroll on his day is the fastest driver on the grid. Turkey 2020 proves that. I'm trying to think of other times. Baku 2017, he was amazing. He just kept out of trouble when everyone else was getting into it. What other moments is he famous for in F1? I mean, in 2020, his 2020 season overall was very good until he got COVID. He was like 4th in the standings temporarily. That was the one chance he properly had. Like, if we'd have gone with his career before like 2023, when he started properly getting a bit shit, I'd maybe consider putting him with Albon. But we're in the present. We're in 2024. He's done okay in the first race of 2023. He was 1 place off of Fernando, and I think about 10 seconds behind. And I think that hopefully this season for him will prove that 2023 was an anomaly, because 2023 was the biggest hit to his reputation that he's had in his entire career. Like, everyone's called him a pay driver, but most people accepted that on his day he was good. But in 2023 he had no good moments. He always used to have one good moment a season, but in 2023 he didn't have that. He had people talk about his Bahrain and his injury, but he still nearly took out his teammate. So next one is Tsunoda. I'd put him in C. Why is my microphone it? I'd put him in C tier. But I think behind Stroll. Now that might be controversial because people say, "Oh, Stroll's terrible," but Tsunoda's not much better. Tsunoda is an average driver. He's a yardstick. That's why they put Ricciardo in that car. They know that Tsunoda is a decent driver, so they want to see if Ricciardo is on the same level as Tsunoda. That's what they did at the start of, or that's what they did midway through 2023. That's what they've done with Lawson. And Tsunoda, he's average. Don't get me wrong. He's not terrible. He's not awful. His 2021 season, he was a bit crash prone, but since then he's ironed that out. He's not a terrible driver. Got a 4th in Abu Dhabi 2021, which is his best result. But I do think that he could be doing a lot better, considering the fact that he's a Honda works driver, or Honda-backed driver, and that he is very good anyway. It's all the new drivers at the moment. I'm waiting to get into the good ones, or the good old ones. Guan Yu Zhou, I wouldn't put him in E tier with Latifi and Mazepin. I'm actually going to put him above Giovinazzi and Schumacher. That might seem controversial, but Zhou for me is... See, I wouldn't say underrated, because underrated means that people don't see your talent, but he is in a way underrated because he's a good driver, keeps it out of the wall. Although he paid to be an F1, he's not a typical pay driver. He does have results to back up his... he does have results to back up his talent. He has multiple wins in F2. Admittedly, he doesn't have the best championship finishes. I think his highest position was like 3rd in quite a weak year for the championship. But I think overall, for what he is, he's a pay driver. And he's good. I think he's done better than Giovinazzi has so far because he's kept up with Bottas. Bottas is a much better teammate than Raikkonen was during his latter years. And he's better than Schumacher because he doesn't crash the car all the time. Hamilton, right, for now he's going in the top tier because he's miles clear of anyone else. Gerhard, here we go, we're getting into the older drivers now. Gerhard Berger. Gerhard Berger. Solid S tier driver. Obviously you've got S plus and then you've got S tier. S tier driver. See, he's one of the best drivers never to win a championship. Probably top 10 drivers never to win a championship. He was always in good cars. He was in Ferrari from 87 until 89. McLaren from 91 until 92. He was in a Benetton, which, although it wasn't championship contending, it was still decent from 96 to 97. And he was just... It was just a very solid, dependable driver. He is like what I'd say a modern-day Carlos Sainz, except he was a bit better because he can string together very good performances. Like, for example, I think he had, after his dad died and he came back after a 3-race sabbatical in Germany, I think it was, he got pole win and fastest lap and got a Grand Slam, which no one expected. But he was a very capable driver on his day. And he never really made many mistakes from what I remember. He was driven from, 1984 until 1997. Drove for ATS at the first part of his career. I think, did he drive for Zaxbyt at some point? Or Tyrrell? I think he might have done it in his, 85 and 86. No, he moved to Benetton in 86 and then moved to Ferrari, moved to McLaren, moved to Benetton and then retired at Benetton. Valtteri Bottas. He's on a similar level to Berger in the fact that he's a number 2 driver or has been in good teams and just hasn't managed to perform. He's definitely worse than Berger, though. I think that's very... I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. James Hunt. James Hunt is obviously a world champion, which we have to take into the fact. He didn't have much longevity. I think he's pretty much the shortest career for any champion. Actually, no, because Farina and Ascari both only did 5 years at the top because Farina retired in 55 and then came back and did the 1956 or 7 Indy 500 when his teammate got killed. And then Ascari obviously died before he had a chance to fulfill his F1 career. He had 6 seasons. Hunt had 7 seasons. He was only really competitive for the championship in one of them. It was kind of a contender-ish for wins and races for 1975, 76, 77. He was only at his top, at his peak competitiveness for 3 seasons. And overall, for Hunt, to be honest, his peak was amazing. On his day, he was the best driver in the world because he would just push harder than anyone else. He had the determination, he had the grit to be able to do that. But when he couldn't be bothered, he's like Raikkonen in that way. He was very good when he was very good, and when he couldn't be bothered, he's not that good at all. Not that good at all, but he was just kind of average. I'd say he's better than... I'd say overall talent and longevity, he's better than Bottas. But is he better than Berger? That's a tough one. I'll say no because of experience. Ronnie Peterson, right, he is underrated. Ronnie Peterson competed from 1970. His first race was 1970 at Monaco. And then obviously died in the 1978 Italian Grand Prix. World Championship potential driver, and there's no doubt about it. If he'd have carried... I don't know how old he was when he died. I think he might have been 31, 32. He might have been even. He was either late 20s or early 30s. He had a lot of talent. He came runner-up in 1971 despite getting no wins, and was just ruthlessly consistent. He had a couple of off years. Came back in like 74 with March Tyrrell, something like that. He had a couple of really good seasons. I mean, in 1978 he was obviously Andretti's. He wasn't Andretti's number 2 because that implies that he was of a lower caliber driver, and he wasn't. He was just as good. He wasn't better than Andretti. Andretti was very good in 78, but Peterson never got to show his full potential. I think better than Hunt, definitely, because he was he was better for longer. He was just as good for longer, should I say. Is he better than Gerhard Berger? Raw talent, yes, he's better than Gerhard Berger, but he has less longevity. I'm going to put him ahead anyway, because I think there is a difference between like James Hunt and Ronnie Peterson. Jody Scheckter, another kind of late 70s. There was a lot of, in the 70s and early 80s, there was a lot of one-time champions that had kind of obscure stories, or they're more obscure in the champions list. Schecter's one of them. Again, he's like Hunt, and he's like a mix of Hunt and Peterson. His overall level was very good. He had a tendency to have very good days where he was so much clear of everyone else, but overall his level was a bit lower. Drove for McLaren in 73. Admittedly, he was a bit crash prone, and that's why he caused that massive crash at Silverstone, which took out 11 cars. 74, he drove for Tyrrell, I think. I think that's when he moved to Tyrrell. Obviously, became famous pretty much, like, he not became famous for, but he's known for driving that six-wheeled car to victory in Anderstorp in 76. Proved himself a lot. He got quite a few race wins in Tyrrell. Went to Walter Wolf Racing, got a win for them. Then went to Ferrari the year after, with Gilles Villeneuve as his teammate, who some people think is one of the greatest of all time. I mean, I disagree, but that's fine. He's still good, but I think the caliber of teammate he came up against was actually very good. Scheckter, I'd probably put him. He's ahead of Hunt, definitely, not just for longevity, but to be fair, he only had 6 seasons or 7 seasons because he started in 73 and then retired in 1980 because Ferrari was shit and he didn't want to carry on driving a shit car, which is fair enough. He had a similar longevity to Hunt, but I think his overall driving level was better than the Englishman. Not as good as Berger. I think if he'd have put Berger in Schecter's cars in that era and in that sort of thing, Berger would have got maybe the same amount of championships, but would have got some better results. Actually, Scheckter he got second and third a couple of times, so I might put that there. Because I don't think Berger, he never came runners up, and I don't think he got a third place in the championship ever. I think it was always filled by Piquet, Mansell, Senna, Prost, pretty much, was all those kind of late 80s to early 90s. Barrichello. He's similar to Berger. He's similar to Bottas, obviously. Number 2 at a big team to a big driver. Proved his worth on a number of occasions. Lots of experience. Obviously had a career that I think he was the first driver to beat Graham Hill's record for most consecutive seasons. Because obviously Riccardo Patrese did 77 to 93, which is 17 consecutive seasons. But Graham Hill did 18 consecutive seasons, and then Barrichello did 93 to 2011, which is 19 consecutive seasons. So he just about beat out Graham Hill with lots of longevity, and Barrichello never really had a peak. Obviously, in this Ferrari years, he was most successful, but at Brawn, he was still getting wins. He was still at Honda. He was still getting a podium even in the shitbox Honda of 2008. In his Jordan years, he was great. Like, you can't really pinpoint a peak for Barrichello, which is why it's hard to rank him. I'd probably put him below Hunt, above Bottas. Felipe Massa, obviously Brazilian Ferrari number 2 in the 2000s. Definitely a very capable driver on his day. Good in Sauber. Moved to Ferrari, was very good there. Championship potential, yes, which probably should put him higher. But post his accident, he wasn't the same driver. He wasn't anywhere near the level he was in 2008 before. 2008 and before, should I say. This is a tough one, actually. Let me have a think. Because I don't think he's better than Bottas. Not because I think his peak of driving was better than Bottas's, but his longevity isn't. And when they went up as teammates, Bottas was clearly the better driver. Yeah, I think he's the first driver to go in A tier because he's better than these lot, but he's not as good as these lot. Jacques Villeneuve had probably the shortest prime of any F1 champion. 2 seasons where he was very good, and then the rest of his career was just average. 1996 comes in with Damon Hill as his teammate, who is an established driver, not the best of champions by any stretch of the imagination, probably one of the worst champions on pure talent. And he got within a race win of his points as a rookie. Then in 1997, obviously, has Frentzen as his teammate. Frentzen flops, despite the fact that Frank Williams thought that he was better than Damon Hill, which, to be fair, at the time he probably was. And then Villeneuve has Frentzen again in 98 as a teammate, but Williams is shit, and he gets like 2 podiums. Not sure how many Frentzen got, but I don't think he got 2. So he was all right in 98, you could say. Then 99, he was in a shit car, so he couldn't prove himself. 2000, the car was better, but he only got like a couple of point scores. 2001 was probably BAR's best year with Villeneuve in it. He had 2 podiums, and it was his teammate Olivier Panis. I think it might have been. Yeah, I think it was Olivier Panis in 2001. He was just, for the rest of his career, he was just average. 2002, he didn't have Button as his teammate. He might have had Panis again as his teammate. 2003, he did have Button as his teammate and got absolutely wiped across the floor with him. 2004, obviously he got kicked out from BAR because Craig Pollock resigned as team principal or was kicked out as team principal. And he decided to go to Renault mid-season because Flavio Briatore thought it would be good to bring in a world champion who hadn't raced in half a year. And he did shit. He was in a car that was capable of wins in the hands of Alonso, or at least in the hands of Trulli, should I say, because Trulli was the only Renault driver that got a win that year. He should have been at least getting podiums if he was really the caliber driver that he was in the late 90s. But he didn't even get a point in that 2004 Renault in any of the races he did. And it's not like he retired in any of them. I think he might have retired in like 1, but he had like 6 races to prove himself, and he didn't. Somehow got a Sauber drive for 2005, probably literally because he was a champion, and that probably brought a lot of PR and crap with it. 2006 was doing average again, as he usually did, and then got the injury in Hockenheim, and then didn't want to fight for the seat with Kubica, so he just retired, and then went to NASCAR, went back to IndyCar at one point, went to V8 Supercars, went to Formula. He literally did everything. He's the village bicycle of motorsports. You look at a series and he's probably driven in it at some point since 2006. He's doing Euro NASCAR, I think, now, and LMP2 cars. I don't know how he's doing in those, but I think overall driving talent, he's better than Massa. I mean, if we're talking about not just F1, but IndyCar and NASCAR and all that sort of stuff, he'd probably be in S tier, but I don't know enough about those sports to make a fair judgment. So I'm going to say for F1, purely, Villeneuve is in A tier and ahead of Massa. He's not as good a driver as Bottas. Actually, no, I think I'll probably put Bottas down below here into A tier with Villeneuve and Massa, and probably put him there. Mario Andretti. Again, this is another driver like Villeneuve who, if this wasn't just about F1, he'd be in here. Well, Villeneuve wouldn't be in the top tier, but he would be close. Andretti, another one of the late 70s one-time champions, as there was a lot in those days. In the same bracket as Scheckter, Jones, Rosberg, Hunt. Definitely a higher level than at least Scheckter and Hunt and Jones, because he had longevity in F1, and that's where the other drivers lack kind of, that's where they lack. I'm just checking that my volume levels are fine. That's where they lack, the other drivers, they lack in longevity. He started his career in the late 60s. He was pretty sporadic for the first few years of his career. He did 1 or 2 races, or a couple of races. Got pole on his debut, and then had to not start the race because he'd started a race in America 24 hours before, or something stupid like that. And the FIA had some rule that you can't start 2 races within 24 hours of each other, which is stupid. It is. Especially back in those days when drivers could drive multiple series, at least competently. It's not like it's a rule nowadays that you can't, but they just don't do it because they wouldn't be good enough. Because modern series are so like tailor-made to each driver. You are a touring car driver. You aren't a racing driver anymore. You're a touring car driver. You're a stock car driver. You're a open wheeler driver. You're a whatever. You aren't like, you can't just be a racing driver nowadays. You kind of does whatever gets them the trophies and gets them the points and gets them the money, because it's so tailor-made nowadays. But anyway, away from my rant about general motor racing, Andretti's definitely better than Villeneuve in my opinion, on pure driving talent and on longevity. I mean, I had someone in my comments when I did my Elio De Angelis video saying that him beating Andretti wasn't that special because Andretti was washed by 1980, but then he managed to get a pole position in 1982 when he was like 2 years older, so I didn't really get what they were saying there. Better than Barrichello, yes. Better than Hunt, yes. Better than Berger, yes. Scheckter, yes. Peterson, no. I think, as I said, if we're talking about pure driving talent and impact outside of Formula 1, yes. He's better than Peterson. But he's like, I really think Peterson had potential to get at least 2 championships, if not during his career, if not during the career he had, but just in the career he would have had afterwards, had he not died. I'd put Andretti there ahead of Scheckter. I've been recording for how long now? 27 minutes, and I've got through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 drivers. So I'm doing about a driver a minute, so we're going to be going for quite a while then. Alan Jones. Again, another late 70s, early 80s, one-time champion. There's not really much to say about him. I'd probably put him below Scheckter, because his overall driving level was very consistent. He never really had a peak year or peak years. He was very good at Shadow, very good at Williams. I mean, he came back with Arrows and Haas Lola, but that was just to get some more money in his bank, which I can completely understand. Even in Haas Lola, he wasn't that bad, considering he was, 4 or 5 years out of full-time Grand Prix driving. He was still getting points positions in a car that probably wasn't deserving of those points positions. So I'd put him ahead of... Would I put him ahead of Scheckter? No. I would put him ahead of Berger, though. There we go. Carlos Reutemann. Obviously died a couple of years ago, which is a shame. But made his debut in 1972. I think, did he get pole on his debut in Argentina? I think he might have done. I think his breakout campaign was 74 when he was with Ferrari. I think it was his first season with Ferrari. Or was that Regazzoni? I always get mixed up with Reutemann and Regazzoni because they had very similar careers in terms of teams, and they also have the first 2 letters of their name being the exact same. I'm trying to think of... Again, he never really had a breakout season. He could have won 1981 had he not bottled it in Caesar's Palace and driven mediocre. He's on A tier, I'd say. Actually, I'm going to put Bottas below Massa and probably below Reutemann as well. There we go. I think that's a fair... now, Alberto Ascari, this is where we're starting to get to properly, world-class drivers. We've only really had Hamilton. Is he on the same level as Hamilton? No, but he's on the same tier as Hamilton. I mean, it's hard with Ascari because in the early years of F1, there was only one team that was at the top. It was either Alfa Romeo or Ferrari. And in 1952 and 53, it was only Ferrari. Towards the end of 53, we sort of see Maserati and... who else creeped in? And Ferrari creep in and... Maserati and someone else. I don't think, maybe it was just Maserati, but they started to creep in at the end of 1953 and started to get good results. And that was when NASCAR was most dominant. And then in 1954 and 55, the Lancia D50 was so bad or so unreliable. He got pole position in Pedralbes in 54, but overall didn't really have a chance to show his potential. He died aged like 36, I think he was. So he could have got, considering that Fangio retired at 47, he could have gone on to race into the 60s. At least into the 60s. Probably would have retired around about 65, 66 when all the engine regs started changing. It would have been probably about 45, 46. Definitely a very capable driver. An S tier, and he's better than Peterson by an absolute long shot. Coulthard, David Coulthard. Lots of longevity. Again, never really had a peak. He was very good from the start. He managed to get on the same level as Damon Hill in 94 a couple of times. Was he better than Barrichello? Probably not. Was he better than Villeneuve? Probably not. Was he better than Massa? Probably not. Was he better than Reutemann? Probably not. Better than Bottas, though, I think, yes. Yes, I think he is. That's probably fair. Jack Brabham. Right now he's in S tier, but I think he's going to come down. I think Ascari was probably a better driver than Brabham, but Brabham had the better career because he didn't die. Let's be honest with ourselves. He went into his mid-40s, which even in the 1970s, drivers going into their 40s, and not just going into their 40s and being competitive, was a rare sight. I think, like, for example, Graham Hill went until he was 46, but he wasn't competitive after, like, 1969. Whereas Brabham was competitive in his last season. He could have probably, if his wife hadn't have considered him, hadn't have convinced him to retire, I think that Jack Brabham could have easily gone into probably 1971. Sorry, itchy head, in 1972. I think, actually, you know what, I'm going to put him ahead of Ascari just on longevity basis. Emerson Fittipaldi. Again, if we're talking not just F1 but IndyCar, he would be on the same level as the top guys because he got, I think, 2 IndyCar championships and 2 Indy 500s as well as 2 F1 championships. And that was also later on in his career. He was like pushing 40, 45 when he finally retired from IndyCar. He was only 30 when he retired from F1 driving, I think. Was he? Or was he... So he got his first championship when he was 25. He got his first championship when he was 25. He would have got... I was in 72, so he would have been 32. So he was still an early retirement, but it wasn't as early as I may have thought. Better than Peterson, yes. He won 2 championships and could have won more if he'd have not gone to his brother's team. Graham Hill, super underrated driver. I don't know why more people don't talk about him. Wasn't as good as Jim Clark. That's the thing. People always talk about Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, and those 2 drivers just completely cloud people's vision, and people forget about Graham Hill. He won Monaco 5 times. That was a third of his Grand Prix wins. He managed to have the longest career in F1 until Rubens Barrichello came along and ruined it. I think there's a crazy I think I researched this when I was doing a video that Graham Hill during his F1 career, 34 drivers died, and I don't think that's including the Indy 500. I don't think it is. So you could fill a grid with drivers, it's either 30 or 34, you could fill a grid and a half of modern F1 drivers with the drivers that died during Graham Hill's career from 1958 to 1975. Monaco Grand Prix, because that's when he retired. Like, he was below Jim Clark's level, but not by much. But away from adjusting my headset. Jenson Button, very capable driver. That's probably fair. Or he's better than Peterson. No, he's not better than Peterson. He's better than Andretti. F1 career, no. Overall, probably still no. That's when I draw the line, I think. Jenson Button. Again, very capable driver, lots of longevity. Wasn't always competitive through that longevity. I mean, his latter McLaren years from like 2013 onwards were basically just a good driver, a good driver, not a great driver, but a good driver in a bad car. Next one, Sterling Moss. Now, this is difficult because he didn't win any championships, but on pure driving talent, he deserves at least 2. Maybe 3, maybe 4 if he got lucky. But he didn't get lucky. He never got lucky. Or he was at least too sportsmanlike to be lucky. Because nice guys never win in F1. Better than Peterson, yes. Better than Fittipaldi, yes. Does he belong in top tier with Ascari? Is the gulf between Fittipaldi and Ascari too much? For now, I'll say no, but I think he's going to get moved down at some point. Jean Alesi. Fans of a certain age love him because of how aggressive he was. He was basically the Gilles Villeneuve of anyone who was born around the time Gilles Villeneuve died. Very fast on his day, but also very inconsistent, which is what brings him down. I'm not going to put him on the same level as Russell, don't worry. Actually, you know, I might put him on the same level. Bottas is a bit too high for my liking, I've just realised. He's going to go probably there. And Alesi can go behind Sainz, because I think Sainz has more consistency. I think Norris and Russell haven't proved themselves enough in top-tier machinery to be able to be ahead of Alesi yet. Giancarlo Baghetti. Right, you see, now we have a race winner, but not a very good one. He got 1 race win in the 1961 French Grand Prix, beat Dan Gurney by a tenth of a second. It was his first race, and then he never got any good results ever again. I think he got like 2 other points scores in his entire career. And then, no, he never even got on the podium again. It's hard to judge how good of a driver he really was, because I think did he move to ATS with Phil Hill? I think he might have done, and that might have just ruined his career. I think his win is probably one of the luckiest in F1 history, because I think like so many cars in front of him retired, and it was a slipstream battle between him and Dan Gurney. I'd probably put him behind, or just ahead of Tsunoda, but behind Stroll on terms of pure driving. Bandini, Lorenzo Bandini, won the 1964 Austrian Grand Prix at Zeltweg, which is one of the worst circuits in F1 history, but that's nothing against Bandini. Died in Monaco 67. That's the main crux of his career. Very capable. Allegedly crashed into Graham Hill on purpose in the 1964 season finale. But that's not proven, so I'm not going to act like it's complete fact and hold it against him. Even then, I couldn't really hold it against him in a ranking like this. There. Because I don't think he's worse than Albon, but I think he's on the better side of the gap between Bottas and Albon in terms of driving ability. Jean-Pierre Beltoise. Another one-time winner. Not as lucky as Baghetti, because his win was on pure merit. He won in the wet at Monaco in 1972 and won by like 38 seconds over people like Jackie Ickx, who were incredibly good in the wet weather conditions. He was in a BRM, which, I mean, although wet conditions basically stabilise any sort of car disadvantages, there's still, you could say, a BRM and a Ferrari have very different handling characteristics, especially in 1972. Better than Bandini? No, he did have a longer career than Bandini in terms of at the top, because he was a natural works driver and was always in and around the podium and points positions. Better than Albon. Actually, he could go down to C tier with all these kind of upper midfield drivers. I think he'd be perfect for this. Better than Albon, definitely. Joe or Joaquin Bonnier. Had a 15-year career from 1956 to 1971. I'm not just reading this off of Wikipedia, by the way. It's just, that's how I think of people's careers. I just know that off by heart. Won the 1959 United States Grand Prix. No, he didn't. He won the 1959 Dutch Grand Prix. I always mix up him and Innes Ireland. So I always think of him as the United States Grand Prix winner. That was Bruce McLaren's first win, and he became the youngest driver. Not really the youngest driver to win a race, not just the youngest driver. Died at Le Mans in 72. which obviously stunted his career, but I think he'd already retired from F1 by that point. I think he was pushing 40, if not already 40 by that point. Difficult one. Because his win, from what I remember, wasn't really a thing on merit. It might have been, actually, because I think Zandvoort had come back after a bit off the calendar, and I think he might have just been, where do I put him? I don't think he's as good as Beltoise, but I don't think he's good as, I think I'd probably put him behind Stroll, ahead of Baghetti. Vittorio Brambilla. The Andrea de Cesaris of the 1970s, I think, is a fair way to describe Vittorio Brambilla. Got the win with March 75 at the Österreich Ring in the pouring rain, half points race. Crashed across the line and drove back to the pits with a total nose cone. And again, he got a couple of other points positions, never got another podium, but he got a couple of other points positions. He was able to run in high positions during races, but then just fell back because he made mistakes or crashed or had a mechanical problem. A bad driver, why is it so echoey? A bad driver, no. A world-class driver, also no. I'd probably put him on pure talent, probably above Lance Stroll, but behind Alex Albon. Francois Sever. So much potential loss with him. Look how many drivers we got to go. Jesus. Lance Stroll. Sorry, not Lance Stroll. Where am I saying? Francois Sever. Lots of lost potential. Started his career in F1. I think in 1969 he did the German Grand Prix in an F2 car at the Nordschleife. It's difficult. I mean, he died before he really had a chance to show his potential. Got only one race win. Better than Bandini, yes. Better than Bottas on pure driving talent, yes. But that's probably about as far as I'd go. Because although I think his overall driving talent probably usurps Russell and Norris, he was only in F1 in a top car for 3 seasons. And yes, you could say the same about Norris and Russell, but they have had a more chance to prove their potential. I think Sever is fairly rated there. Luigi Fagioli. If F1 was a thing before the war, I mean, they had Grand Prix, but they didn't have F1. I mean, they had the Formula 1 Grand Prix from 46 until 49, but it wasn't a World Championship. If they had the Formula 1 World Championship, let me clarify, before 1950, Fagioli would be up in S or A tier. He still has one of the highest podium finish records in F1 because I think he got lucky with the fact he didn't retire from many races. And he got his one win in France where he handed the car over to Fangio mid-race and then quit the team because he didn't think that a veteran of his kind of calibre should ever be forced to give up a car to his teammate, even though he wasn't that good anymore. Well, he wasn't the best anymore. He was he was in his 50s. I think he was either 51 or 53 when he won that race. I think he might have been 53 because I think he's the only driver to win a race who was born in the 19th century. Very good driver still, even at his age. Probably put him ahead of Bandini, but below Bottas. Pierre Gasly, more modern driver. Not born in the 19th century. Another one-time race winner. Upper midfield, so definitely C tier, I probably think. Better than Beltoise? No. Better than Albon? Now, probably no, he's not better, but overall in his career, I think I'd probably put him ahead. Gasly is amazing in a midfield car. He just doesn't perform in cars that are either right at the back or right at the front. Peter Geffen, I mean, he looked into his win. Although, yes, it was slipstream, and you can obviously, like for example, if in oval racing and stuff like that, slipstreaming and drafting is a skill you need to have. But in F1, not so much. Even obviously, Monza isn't an oval, but in the 1970s, it was the closest you can get to a drafting track in Formula 1. Won out over Ronnie Peterson. Peterson would have got a winning. He could have even won. I'm not sure how far he was off the championship lead in 71. I think he was quite far off because I think Stewart pretty much dominated that year. But we're gonna probably put Geffen in with Baghetti's win was almost completely down to luck. Geffen, there was some sort of driving skill, so I'll put him ahead there. Richie Ginther, much more prominent than Geffen during his career. Obviously, one of the American pioneers in Formula One, along with Harry Shelm, Aston Gregory, and Dan Gurney, from the 50s to the 60s. He got signed to Ferrari in 59, went to Honda, and then I think he went to Eagle for a couple of races. Got the win in Mexico in 1965, the first Honda driver to win a race. The first until Button did it in 06. Very capable. I think he's got like 14 podiums or something like that. He's very capable. Better than Stroll, better than Brambilla, better than Albon, better than Gasly, better than Beltoise, better than Mandini, but not better than Fagioli. Enos Ireland. I got him mixed up with Bonnier earlier on. Won the 1961 US Grand Prix, and is French. Won the 1961 US Grand Prix. But overall, he just kind of got a couple of podiums here and there and was kind of played second fiddle. He was a Van Wall driver, he was a Cooper driver, he was a Ferrari driver, I think, at one point. BRM, I think he was basically, he was a village bicycle of all the British teams and did very well, or decently well in most of them, and then retired and then died in the I think it was 1993 he died. He's just kind of like, he's in with Bonnier and Geffen and Baghetti as lucky race winners, not race winners on pure caliber, but either got lucky in the race itself or just put in a performance of their life that no one else could replicate. Ahead of Geffen, because Geffen's wins pretty much on pure luck, but not ahead of Bonnier. Heikki Kovalainen. Did good in 07. His 07 campaign with Fisichella as his team, it was brilliant because he was going up against a driver who was a midfield master in a midfield team, and he beat him in his rookie season. Got smacked out of the park by Hamilton in 08 and 09. Not so much in 08, but definitely so in 09. And then was at Lotus for the rest of his career, / Caterham for the rest of his year, and then came back for one appearance with Lotus in 2013. Not a bad career by any stretch of the imagination, but not the greatest either. I'd probably put him ahead of Stroll, ahead of Brambilla, but behind Albon. Kubica has lost potential. Kubica has a lot of lost potential. How many drivers? Jesus Christ. How many drivers is there in each row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132, 144, 156, 168, 80, 92. Still got 200 drivers to go. Kubica, championship potential. Better than Sainz, better than Coulthard, I think. But I think I wouldn't put him ahead of Reutemann. Actually, would I? I'd probably put him ahead of Reutemann, but behind Massa, because that's where you get into the untapped potential, can't beat out pure pace. Untapped potential can't beat out experience. Maldonado, I mean, I think Maldonado is quite underrated. I believe that Maldonado, if he was given the right training and if he was given the right opportunities during his career, he could have been nurtured into a champion because his pure pace was absolutely incredible. The qualifying performances he pulled out in 2012 were amazing. 2012 was his best season. Only did 5 seasons in F1. 2015, towards the end of 2015, he actually wasn't that bad. Like, he was consistently best of the rest in 2015. And that's when he kind of cut out the crashing. So ironically, I think 2015 was probably the best run of his career. Or the best run of his career in the later half of that season. And then he retired on a high. Obviously, Spain was an amazing drive in a car that definitely wasn't the best. Or anywhere near the best. His teammate was 2.5 seconds off his pace in qualifying. And then crashed out in the race. He's still only C tier though, because although his upper performance is probably up in S or A tier, his lower performances were much lower down. There, probably above Kovalainen and below Albon is fair. Jochen Mass got his win of the 1975 Spanish Grand Prix. Sorry, I just blanked out for a second there. I'm a bit tired. But overall was a bit average. Is probably around this area. Probably better than Brambilla, but below Kovalainen. Luigi Musso, very good driver. Gone too soon. He crashed out in the 1958 French Grand Prix because he was in a lot of debt and he was chasing the biggest prize of the season. The one win he got was in '56 in Argentina. It was a shared drive with... Who was it with? Was it with Tony Brooks or Peter Collins or someone like that? It might have been, or Mike Hawthorne. One of the Brits at Ferrari at that era. Very good driver. Better than these lot. Better than Bandini, but not as good as Gimfer in my opinion. Alessandro Nannini. Another very good driver. Upper midfield for most of his career. He got the lucky win in '89 in Japan because Senna got disqualified. But that doesn't really take much about from him because he can't control the disqualification. Probably below Beltoise, above Gasly. He could have gone to Ferrari if he had not had his helicopter crash. But another driver who lost out on potential because of an injury. Well, not an injury, an illness. Obviously, Gunnar Nilsson died in his peak, really. I think he was only like 28, 29 when he died of testicular cancer. There is probably fair. He's better than Maldonado, but not as good as Albon. Esteban Ocon, sorry. He's not as good as Nilsson, but he's better than Maldonado. See, actually, I'm gonna put Nilsson ahead of both of these two because I think that's a bit of a disservice to him. Pace's a difficult one because he had a couple of podiums, a couple of second places, a couple of third places. Won in Sao Paulo in '75, got the circuit named after him. But then again, died in a helicopter crash in '77. Or was it a plane crash? Or it was one of the two. An aviation accident, we'll say. And then we're going to go for probably ahead of Maldonado, behind Ocon. Olivier Panis, not really a race-winning caliber driver. Never was in a race-winning car. Was at Ligier and Prost 95% of his career. Moved to BAR. Moved to who was he in 2004? Toyota. Moved to Toyota. Never was always an upper midfield driver who was very good. Like these guys, like your Kovalainen's, just a bit longer term. And I would probably put him there. Because I think Maldonado had much more pure talent, but Panis had a lot more consistency. But I think Maldonado's talent outweighs Panis' consistency. Ludovico Scarfiotti. I mean, he is one of the most obscure race winners. Hardly anyone knows who he is. He won the 1966 Italian Grand Prix. Again, that F1 was a drafting track. Ferrari always had the most powerful engines. I don't even think he got another point outside of it. He might have got like one other point outside of this race. But it was an anomalous win. there, probably ahead of Ireland. Piero Taruffi. Again, I think he had a lot of pre-war success. Retired in 1955. He drove for Ferrari and Mercedes. He drove for Mercedes in a lap, but wasn't really successful with them. Won the 1952 Swiss Grand Prix because Ascari was busy preparing for Indy, which I think was the week after the Swiss Grand Prix. And he did well. He was probably the lead driver at that point, or at least one of the drivers who wasn't Ascari, and got the win. Got a couple of the podiums outside of his win. He wasn't just a fluke winner like some of the other guys. And I think he won the Mille Miglia a couple of times. He was quite an older driver. I mean, I've watched the Ferrari documentary, and they portray him as kind of the elder statesman, the old man who knows what he's doing. He would have been pushing 50, I assume, when that was set, which is 56, 57, and 58. Better than Maldonado, I think. No. Better than Kovalainen, but not better than Panis. Jarno Trulli, long career, 97, to 2011. Won a race at Monaco in 2004. Mostly an upper midfield team driver. Very good at what he did. Very good in qualifying. Backed off in the races. But considering he was good at defending, the lack of race pace never really mattered because he was able to just hold people behind. I think he goes there. That's ahead of Maldonado and behind Pache. Mika Hakkinen. Let's have a look at him. So, made his F1 debut in 91 with Lotus, stayed with them through to 93, took over Michael Andretti's seat after the Italian Grand Prix, stayed at McLaren for the rest of his career, actually, for the rest of his career. 2 championships, could have won 1 more. Schumacher said he was the driver he most feared, or something like that. I think that let's look up above these kind of guys. Better than Hakkinen. Sorry, better than Fittipaldi. Not as good as Moss. Only put him up in that top category for now. Verstappen already going into that top category. Better than Hakkinen, yes. Better than Moss, yes. Better than Ascari, yes. Better than Brabham, yes. Better than Hill, no. Some people are going to say that's controversial because they think he's a cheat or whatever. I know some people who don't like him or think that he's a bit arrogant think that he's a cheat when he's not. Like, a lot of people will say... To be fair, I see it's a difficult one because a lot of people say, for example, oh, back when I was young, like the drivers were gladiators. Like, to be fair, if you were a fan up until like the 80s, the early 90s, you can easily say that when drivers were actually dying. But then you get people saying like, oh, back in the day, drivers were more sportsmanlike, and then you explain to them about Senna and Prost and Piquet, and then they go, yeah, but that doesn't matter. Because I like to have my version of history be the only version of history that anyone can have, which is fair enough. But people can have their opinions. Absolutely, they're entitled to say they think that Verstappen is the worst driver ever. He's down here because he crashed people out a lot on purpose when that's not true. Because they're allowed to have their opinions even if they're wrong. But I think he is not in my top 10 yet. But when he wins his 4th title, it's not if, it's when he wins his 4th title this season. I think he'll be going into my top 10. Anyway, rant over. Kimi Räikkönen. At his peak, he's up here. But his low points are really quite low for a driver of his calibre. 2014 comes to mind. Got absolutely trounced by Alonso. Admittedly, he'd come into a team that was Alonso's team. But he just didn't prove any good at any point in the season. Not as good as Peterson, better than Andretti, I think is a fair statement for him. Damon Hill, right. I have a couple of gripes with Damon Hill's career. I've ranted about him many times, talking about how he's one of the least deserving, or not least deserving, but least successful or least talented champions. And where's he gone? There he is. To be fair, on pure driving talent, I genuinely think he's probably an A tier. He's the lowest ranked champion, I think, so far. There's Villeneuve. He's not better. I think Carlos Reutemann proved he was a lot better. That's the thing. Hill has 2 performances in his entire career that were truly legendary, like top 20 drivers of all time. But overall, most times, most races, he wasn't that good. Let's be honest. Like, he got 20-something wins, but most of those were because he was the only good driver, the only driver in a good car who didn't retire in a race. I think, yeah, he shouldn't have even been in the title fight in '94. He did good in the end of the season to get there, but then got outperformed by Mansell in qualifying, and just overall, I don't think he was that good a driver. Like, you look at his teammates. Yes, Prost was very good, but then Coulthard wasn't really the biggest of talents, especially not when he was a rookie or in his first 2 years of F1. Senna, he got absolutely trounced by in his first 2 races, and people say, well, Senna retired during the races and Hill didn't. Yes, because Senna actually knew how to push the car and Hill didn't. He wasn't that much better than Mansell. I genuinely think this is an alternate history thing, but I think that if Mansell started the 1994 season as the teammate of Damon Hill and not Ayrton Senna, I think that Mansell would have won the title. I think that Mansell would have won the title. Because Hill had a very high performance ceiling, he just never reached it, or apart from 2 occasions, in '94 in Suzuka and then in '97 in Hungary. Because his performance ceiling is up in the top guys' performance ceiling, but most of the time he was no better than like a Bottas. Nelson Piquet, like, I completely disagree with Nelson Piquet's stance on 95% of things outside of a racetrack, but on the racetrack he was very good. I think personally, honestly, and without sugarcoating, he's a racist, horrible person who shouldn't be around the F1 paddock, at least officially. He should be allowed to attend races and stuff, but he shouldn't be surprised when the media don't want him around them, because there are a lot of people that say they should be able to say whatever they want and that freedom of speech and all that, but then as soon as someone has a different opinion from them, it's all of a sudden you've got to give people respect. But nonetheless, he was a very good driver, better than these lot, better than Scheckter, better than Button, better than Andretti, better than Raikkonen, better than Peterson, better than Fittipaldi. So yeah, in the top tier. I don't like doing this. I don't like putting him in the top tier, but you can't ignore talent. You can't just ignore talent because of what he did off track. Better than Hakkinen? No, because his peak wasn't as good and it wasn't for as long. Nico Rosberg, not Keke, the other one. Still got a lot of drivers to go, fucking hell. Keke Rosberg. No, sorry, Nico Rosberg. Probably ahead of Barrichello, ahead of Hunt. And that's where I'd stop. Fangio, where is the S tier? He is the best driver so far, in my opinion. Nope, he's not. Never mind. No, he isn't. There we go. Lauda, top 5 F1 drivers of all time for me. Most people underrate Lauda. Most people don't realise how good he actually was. Jackie Stewart. I'm trying to flick for a lot of these drivers now because I've realised how long I've been going. Where's Jackie Stewart just gone? Where have I just put him? Where is it? What? Where? There. E tier. Yeah, he's not in E tier. Don't worry. There. So that's ahead of Hill. Sorry, behind Hill, ahead of Verstappen. That's Graham Hill, not Damon. Don't worry. Elio De Angelis. I've done a video on this guy. I think you'll all know that, or at least some of you will. Very underrated. Didn't have much. Had a lot of untapped potential. Better than those lot. I think he's up here. There, I think it's there. I think getting up to people like James Hunt is where untapped potential doesn't beat pure results. Next is Patrick Depailler. I mean, the main thing people know about him isn't really any of his performances, but there's an onboard of him that goes around online from him at Long Beach in 76, 77, I think it was, or 78, because actually it was a four-wheeled car, so it would have been 78 when Tyrrell finally got rid of that thing. The way he drove was amazing, and he was quite underrated as well. Depailler, I'd probably put up in this tier, ahead of Sauver, but behind Russell and Norris. Sorry. Jose Froilan Gonzalez, the first ever Ferrari winner, won 2 races for the Scarlet Cars in 1951 and 1954. Can't remember which races they were. Obviously 1951 Britain, but can't remember the other one. Came second in the 54 standings on 25.14 points. 25 and 117 for the point because of the British Grand Prix debacle with 7 drivers getting the fastest lap. A very good driver. Not always the most consistent because of how aggressive he was, and not the fittest because everyone knows him for being fat, really. But I'll probably put him there, ahead of Fagioli, behind Bottas. This is in F1, this isn't in all-time Grand Prix, because otherwise Fagioli would be way higher. Jean-Pierre Jabouille, the pioneer of the Renault Turbo engine. Well, not the guy who made it, but the guy who made it win for the first time in France in 79. Ahead of his home crowd. French car, French engine, French driver, French tyres. To be fair, he's not better than Ginfer, but I think he's probably better than Musso and Bandini. Actually, no, I wouldn't put him there. Purely on the basis that outside of his wins and outside of Renault, he wasn't really that much good. Like, he seemed that he was just a decent driver in a very, very fast car that was unreliable. At least that's how I see it. Charles Leclerc. Obviously, this is as of 2024. This is as of the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix, or at least this is when I'm recording it. I'll probably post it. What is it day? Is it today? Tuesday. So I'll probably be able to post it before the weekend, so you shouldn't skew this result at all. So if Leclerc, so if I post this and then 18 hours later Leclerc crashes out in the Jeddah Grand Prix, don't come and say, why are you saying that? I think he's more talented than Villeneuve, more talented than Barrichello, but he's not more talented than De Angelis. Sergio Perez, probably his recency bias is going to skew most people's view of Sergio Perez. If we'd have done this in 2020 or 2021, or maybe 2019, people would have put him up in a similar level to Sainz, Norris, Russell. As in their standing nowadays. If I was to go for a more historic driver for more, they'd probably put him on the same level as probably Kubica. But nowadays, his reputation's on the floor because of how badly he's performed in Red Bull. Regardless of how fair that is, it's completely true that, where is he? That he's not performed well. He has, 6 Grand Prix wins, which is the same as what Villeneuve has, Gilles Villeneuve, but he doesn't have the same talent. I think that he goes behind Gonzalez, behind Fagioli, but ahead of Ginfer. Peter Revson, some untapped potential. I'm just going to check how many I have. Oh, it's not as many. 12, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20, 32, 44, 56, 68, 80, 92, 104, 116, 128, 140... about 160 or so to go. Revson goes amongst the Depaillers, actually probably ahead of these lot. Probably around the same level as Sainz. Pedro Rodriguez ahead of Bottas behind. No. Ahead of Gonzalez behind Bottas. Joseph Siffert. I always forget about him when I'm doing like quizzes and stuff, because he's one of the more obscure late 60s, early 70s winners, and he also got a couple of other good podiums. There behind Gonzalez, ahead of Fagioli. Patrick Tombe. Short time at the top of his career. Raced from 77, I think, until 85. Was in small, underfunded teams until 1982 when he joined Ferrari. And then retired in 86 with Haas Lola after ending his career, or ending his competitive career with Ferrari. Where did I put him? I keep forgetting where I put these drivers. It's not good. Actually, that's way too high. Fucking hell. Tomo's better than Sever, but ahead of Depailler. The other way around, sorry. Better than Sever, but behind Depailler. Maurice Trintignant, 2 wins at Monaco, but was shit in qualifying. He got like, I don't think he even got a top 3 in qualifying in his career. I think Peter Brook did a video on what would happen if points and championships were decided on qualifying instead of races, but I think the highest finish Trintignant ever got was like 10th, because he was just shit at qualifying. So that does put him down. I'll probably put him behind again for ahead of Musso. Von Trips, untapped potential. Probably ahead of Trintignant, behind Ginther. Nigel Mansell. This is when like the top tiers are becoming quite crowded with really good drivers. Ahead of Fittipaldi, ahead of PK, which will probably anger PK if he ever saw this video, which he won't. But yeah, ahead of Hakkinen actually, yes, but not ahead of Moss. Alonso up in the S tier as well, or S plus tier. I've just had a brain blank. There we go. Probably ahead of Hill, behind Lewis Hamilton. Thierry Boutsen, 3-time Grand Prix winner. Won at Hungary in 89. Won at a race done 2 races in 1990, I think it was. It was either 2 in 89 and 1 in 90, or 2 in 90 and 1 in 89. A bit of a boring character, but knew how to drive clearly because he got 3 wins. So probably there, ahead of Depailler. No. Ahead of Tombe, behind Depailler. Right, we're going to move on to the next driver now. I've just come back from a little break, if you're wondering why there's a massive jump cut or whatever. On to the next driver then. Let's go to Peter Collins. So, Collins, actually quite depicted in the Ferrari movie, the Ferrari documentary that got released a couple of months ago and recently appeared on Sky. His main years were 1956 to 58 until he died at the Nürburgring. Very capable driver, very good driver, should I say. Better than Tombe. I'm going to keep going until I don't think he's better than the next driver. He's better than Depailler, yes. He's better than Russell, yes. And Norris. And De Lacy. And Revson. And Sainz. Is he better than Coulthard now? Giancarlo Fisichella. Oh, this is a tough one. Because although he was great in midfield machinery, he often struggled in top-tier machinery, which screams C-tier. But he's also won a couple of races, so that probably puts him in B-tier just. I'll probably put him behind Perez and ahead of Richie Ginther. Next one is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. I'd probably put him behind Tombe ahead of Sever because of he had a pretty good career. He had 9 years at the top, but overall was quite average. Mike Hawthorne, champion, admittedly one of the least or lesser talented champions or lesser known champions as well, you could say. Better than Damon Hill, I think. Better than Reutemann, probably. Better than Kubica, probably. Better than Massa, that's probably where I draw the line. Johnny Herbert, only ever won races everyone else retired from. Or at least all the other good drivers retired from. Not as good as Richie Ginther, but better than Wolfgang von Trips. Phil Hill, the least successful champion, definitely. But definitely wasn't helped by the fact that he moved to ATS after his championship winning year. And that practically ended his career in terms of competitiveness. He was one of the camera cars for the Grand Prix film in 1966, which is a bit of an interesting fact. But overall, I wouldn't even put him... See, if we're talking about overall racing, he's better than Damon Hill. But F1 career, he only had 3 competitive seasons, and one of which he won. He's better than Revson, he's better than Sainz. But I don't think he was as good as Peter Collins, so I'll put him there. Didier Pironi. Some more untapped talent, or some more untapped potential. Obviously had that crash at Hockenheim in '82, which put an end to his F1 career. Would have won that '82 championship if he hadn't have had that. So I think I can easily put him higher than a lot of other drivers because it was pretty dead on guaranteed that he was going to win that title. He's probably just ahead of Bottas. Senna up in the top bracket. I think anyone who disagrees is a bit stupid. It's just, where do I put him? I'll probably put him ahead of Hamilton, but behind Lauda, Fangio and Clark for now. Gurney, Dan Gurney. He's better than Richie Ginther. Much more successful. I think he's actually up in... He's probably top of B tier, to be fair. That B tier looks like it's a good tier for him. He's better than Sainz, but he's not as good as Phil Hill, I don't think. His peak was very good. And he was pretty much at his peak the entire of his career. I mean, he fell off towards the end, towards like the late 60s, but I think he was focusing on IndyCar more by that point than F1. Eddie Irvine had one chance at a title and failed miserably. I think we all saw that when Schumacher came back and was instantly a second a lap quicker than him. I think that he could have easily won that 99 title if he'd have put his mind to it. Ahead of Herbert behind Ginther is probably... Actually, no. Ahead of Ginther behind Fisichella is probably fair. Bruce McLaren. Very good driver. 6 Grand Prix wins. The youngest Grand Prix winner for a long time. Or the youngest F1 race winner for a long time. Not Grand Prix winner because... Actually, no, yeah, Grand Prix winner. Because if you say F1 race, you can include the Indy 500. But if you say Grand Prix, you don't include the Indy 500. He's up here with these lot. No, actually, he's not better than Dan Gurney. I changed my mind, but he is ahead of Carlos Sainz. Alain Prost, let me just put him in S+. Here. Third, probably behind Fangio and Clark, ahead of Lauda. He's really underrated for me. Sebastian Vettel, or Vettel, or Vettel, or Vettel, or however you can say his name. He's up here. It's just where. Is he better than PK? No. I don't think he is. But he is better than Fittipaldi. Michele Alboreto. Tough one. He had 5 Grand Prix wins. He came second in the 85 championship and was overall quite good. Better than Sainz, I think. Better than McLaren, but not as good as Gurney. Giuseppe Farina, champion. That does put him up the rankings. If it wasn't for his championship, if he'd have come second in 1950 instead of winning it, I think he would be a bit lower down. But he did still win it, even if it was bad luck on Fangio's side. Probably ahead of Hawthorne, behind Massa, is probably a fair judgment. How many have we got left? 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132, 144, about 150 left. So I think we're about halfway through. This list. So next one is Clay Regazzoni. I always get him confused. Not confused with, but I always put him and Carlos Reutemann in a similar sort of pedestal because they both had very similar career trajectories. Were in Ferrari at the same time. They had a very similar name in terms of last name and actually first name as well. So C.RE would be both of their abbreviations, as in like because obviously you sometimes abbreviate the first name of a driver to the first letter of their first name, then a dot, and then R.E. would be there, both of them. It would be C.RE for both of them. But is Regazzoni better than Reutemann? I mean, he was good in 74. He was championship potential in 74, but he never really got close to winning a title, whereas Reutemann did. I think that's what settles that for me. Is he better than Damon Hill? Yes, for me. Keke Rosberg, better than Nico. So where's Nico on this? Let me just find where Nico is so I can put him above him. Nico Rosberg is there. Is he better than Gerhard Berger? Yes. Is he better than Jones? Yes, because he was successful outside of his championship winning year, or at least outside of... Because the thing is, with Rosberg, he was probably better in a couple of seasons outside of his championship winning year than he was in his championship winning year. I think 85 he was very good. 83 and 84 he was also quite good. And 86 he was also decently well, except he just got bad luck with retirements. He was better than Scheckter, he was better than Button, but I wouldn't put him ahead of Andretti. That's where I'd cross the line. Rosberg, still, at the moment, in the top 20, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Oh, just outside the top 20 then, at the moment. John Watson. John Watson, obviously, most well known for basically winning races from the back of the grid. Let me have a look and see what I can think of for him, because I think he is a very good driver. Up there with Alboreto and Gurney, probably there, just there would do. Tony Brooks, another championship potential driver, along with Sterling Moss, except to a lesser extent than Moss, I think. I think he definitely belongs in this higher tier because he's won more races with most of the drivers below him, and he was very close to a title. I think it was 58, 59. Unlike Gurney, I think got a highest of 3rd in the championship, or 4th. Better than Phil Hill, better than Peter Collins, better than David Coulthard, better than Damon Hill. There we go. Then we've got Jack Lafitte. Jack Lafitte, 6-time Grand Prix winner, mostly with Ligier, but got I think 1 or 2 with Williams. Actually, I'd probably put him in his lower tier because he never... I mean, he was an outside shot for the title in 81, but he was never realistically going to get it. I'd probably put him behind Watson, ahead of Alboreto. Patrese got 6 wins as well, but had a much longer career to get those 6 wins. Raced from 77 to 93, and was in very much more successful cars than Lafitte or Watson or Gurney ever were. But I still think he could lead the line for B-tier drivers. Actually, no, he's not better than Gurney. He might be better than Watson and stuff, but he's not better than Gurney. Jochen Rindt, because of the situation he was in, is very underrated, I think. He died at like 29. Obviously, would have won the 1970 championship by even more had he not died, and would have probably won the 72 championship and probably the 75. Actually, maybe not. He might have lasted until 78 when Lotus won their last championship. If he'd have stayed there, that is, he might have moved to Ferrari or moved to another team that was competitive, because he wasn't, like, for example, like, people always talk about Jim Clark, and I say he could have won a couple more championships if he'd stayed with Lotus, but I don't think Rindt was as attached to his team as Clark was. Where have I put him? Where has he gone? I've lost him. I've lost him. Where is he? Where is he? Where have I put him? There he is. He's not one of the worst champions. He's up in S tier, I think. Better than Barrichello, better than Leclerc, better than De Angelis, better than Hunt, better than Berger and Rosberg and Jones and Scheckter and Button and not Rosberg. Ralf Schumacher. Not Michael. Ralf Schumacher. Obviously overshadowed by his brother by a massive amount because of how many races he won. He won 6 races, I think, or 7. All with Williams in the early 2000s. Very good number 2 driver. Couldn't have really led a team, I don't think. He was never really that good at leading teams. Or he was kind of half overshadowed by his teammates. Montoya being one of them. Or overshadowed in terms of, like, influence and presence and standing and that kind of thing. I mean, he was overshadowed by Hill in terms of prestige, but not in terms of talent. Ralf Schumacher, ahead of Alboreto, ahead of Lafitte, but I wouldn't put him ahead of Watson. John Surtees, 1964 champion, was competitive outside of his championship winning year, was competitive right from his debut, to be fair. I think he got like second in not Hungary, Germany in 1960. Then we go for, I'd say, ahead of these lot. He's much better than these lot. Is he better than Barrichello? Yes. Is he better than Leclerc? Yes. Is he better than De Angelis? No, actually, I would say no. Obviously, again, if we're talking motorsport achievements, he'd be up there here because 7 motorcycle. I think he got 7 motorcycle championships or 6 or something like that. A very large amount is what I'm trying to say. Gilles Villeneuve, right? See, if I was born in 1962, I would say he's up here. He's up here and he's the best of all time, but I'm not going to do that. Better than his son. He's better than Barrichello. He's better than Leclerc. He's better than Surtees, in my opinion. Not better than De Angelis, though. I'll put him in S tier. Rennie Arnoux. Pole position king, really. Got 20 pole positions or something throughout his career. which compared to his 6 wins, does kind of make you think, oh, was it because he was really shit in races but good in qualifying like Leclerc is? No, it's because I think most of his pole positions were in the Renault of the early 1980s, and that car was those cars were very unreliable, and it wouldn't be uncommon to see a Renault qualify first and second, and then both retire in the race. Very capable driver, obviously, especially in qualifying. I wouldn't put him on the same level as Depailler, but I'd put him ahead. I'd put him ahead of Boutsen. Juan Pablo Montoya. Again, if we were talking about full motorsport prestige and heritage, rather than just F1, he'd be right up there. However, he's not. This is just F1. I put him ahead of Villeneuve because he also achieved more than Villeneuve did. But I wouldn't put him ahead of De Angelis. Denny Hulme won one championship, sorry. Could have probably won another if he'd have stayed in better machinery for longer. Only one pole position in his entire career, which is a bit shocking, especially when that pole position was 6-7 years after his World Championship. I think it was Spain or South Africa in 73 or 74. Let's go for ahead of Surtees. I wouldn't put him on the same level as Villeneuve, so I'll put him ahead of Surtees, behind Villeneuve. That's Gilles Villeneuve. Jack Hicks, very capable driver, obviously. Le Mans was his calling. He won Le Mans, I think, 6 or 7 times. And that's why he's right. Or it's not right why he's right up here, but it's part of the reason he's very respected. He was bridesmaids 2 or 3 times during his career. Never won the title, though. I do think he's actually better than Denny Hulme, but not as good as Gilles Villeneuve. Daniel Ricciardo. Why did I just say his name? Daniel Ricciardo. He was good in Red Bull. He was still good in Renault. He was awful. He wasn't awful. He was mediocre in McLaren. People say, oh, well, he got a win and Norris didn't, because I have many Ricciardo fans as friends who say, oh, well, Ricciardo got a win and Norris didn't. I don't care. If you do, like, as I say, if you do well in one race but then get outperformed by your teammate in every single other race, it doesn't make you the better driver just because you got a win. It's not NASCAR where wins mean a lot more than actual results. But regardless of that, and the fact that he hasn't really shone at AlphaTauri, even when his teammate is the mediocre, average Yuki Tsunoda, I think we can't ignore the fact he has 7 race wins in a Red Bull, and he beat Sebastian Vettel as teammates, and he took it to Verstappen. He's the only teammate who's took it to Verstappen, maybe apart from Sainz. He did get beat by Kvyat in 2015, but I don't really hold that much against him. I'd probably put him ahead of Schumacher, behind Watson. That's Ralph Schumacher. Speaking of Schumachers, Michael goes up to the S tier, obviously, or the S plus tier. This is going along with my top 10 drivers of all time list. Clark, Fangio, Prost, Schumacher, Lauda, Senna, Hamilton, Alonso, Hill, Stewart is my top 10, and then we get into the rest of the drivers. Mark Webber. Camber Mill Kid. That's all I remember him for. Well, it's not, but he got, 10 wins? Could have won a 2010 championship. Was a very good teammate to Vettel. Not bad for a number 2 driver. Was very good in terms of performance against him. Not as good as Villeneuve, not as good as X, not as good as Hulme, but I think he was probably better than Leclerc. Because although he did bottle on some occasions, obviously career in 2010, Belgium in 2010, he had the tendency to bottle. But when he was good, he was great. He was like, he got points in the Minardi, even though that race was a bit lucky because of everything that happened with the start. He won in Britain in 2010. He won Nürburgring a couple of times. He won Monaco a couple of times. He knew what he was doing. is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, from what I did the I'll be honest, I did look at this list before just to make sure I knew all the drivers, and there are some, especially the pre-war guys, I don't know. But then they put in just random jobs like Christian Albers. Who cares? He goes in here below. He's not fully Latifi level. Actually, no, he probably is, to be fair. He is. He's ahead of Latifi in terms of talent, but not by much. Jaime El Jaswari didn't really get a full chance at an F1 career. In my opinion, he's better than Tsunoda, and probably better than Baghetti, just because Baghetti's win was on pure luck. But I'd probably go that. I wouldn't go that much further. Philippe Alliot, James Hunt's favourite driver. He always said great things about him. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Better than Albers, because I was thinking he was a pay driver from what I remember. He always brought tobacco money, but most drivers did back in the day. Your Andrea De Cesaris and co. I'll probably put him in D tier, but below Schumacher. Chris Amon, best driver never to win a Grand Prix. Or world champ, one of the best drivers never to win a championship, even, you could say. Top 10, even though he never won a race. Was leading, I think, 5 different races and didn't win any of them due to conditions that weren't his fault. He was better than Reutemann, better than Regazzoni. Better than Kubica, yes. Better than Hawthorne, probably no. Actually, yes, I'd say probably better than Hawthorne. Yeah, I'll do that. Bob Anderson. Why is he in here? He got like 2 podiums in the 1960s. Better than Baghetti, yes, but that's about all I can say. I don't know much about him. He's one of the only people I can't really nail down where they got their results. I know he was in the Lotus and the BRM in the early to mid 60s, and that's about it. Richard Atwood, or Dick Atwood, as some people call him. Not because he's a bad person, but that's because Richard. Yeah, everyone knows how name abbreviations work. I don't need to talk about the etymology of words, but he got his 1 podium in 1968 Monaco Grand Prix. Got 3rd place, but for the most part was a bit average. Like, apart from that result, you can't really say anything about him. So I'll probably put him there, ahead of El Jaswari, behind Geffen. Badoer, the driver with the most races without a point, but didn't deserve that tag. He didn't deserve that tag. He should have got a point at some point. I think he would have scored like 20 points if you looked at the modern point system. But then again, you could also say, well, reliability. That's why he would have got there, because reliability. Better than Giovinazzi, better than Zhou, better than Tsunoda, better than Baghetti, better than Anderson. Genuinely, I do think that. He wasn't a bad driver. If he'd have been put in midfield machinery rather than dog shit back markers, he would have been a very good midfield driver, in my opinion. Mauro Baldi. Obviously, he's driving an Arrows there in that picture. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. He's obviously driving an Arrows, but. And he drove for Alfa Romeo for a bit, but I don't really remember anything about him. I'd probably put him top of D tier because I just don't know anything about him or don't remember anything about him. Jean Bérat drove for Ferrari and Maserati in the mid to late 50s. Might have driven for Talbot Lago or some other French team, or what was the other French team? Oh, I'm gonna be crucified in my comments because I've forgotten what it's called. There was one that Robert Manzon drove for. I can't remember, but nonetheless a great driver. Didn't win a race, but I don't hold that against him. He's probably better than Jabouille, but not as good as Bandini. Stefan Beloff, one of the again, more untapped potential. Would have been a world champion had he not died. He's ahead of these lot, ahead of Panis, ahead of Trulli, ahead of Pache, ahead of Ocon, ahead of Albon, ahead of Gasly, ahead of Nilsson, ahead of Nannini, ahead of Beltoise. But I think where we hit bed at is where we start to say, actually, yes, I know he had a lot of potential, but where do we stop it and say, actually, come on, these guys have got good results? Eric Bernard got 1 podium, I think, 1994 German Grand Prix with Ligier 3rd place, behind Olivier Panis and who was the winner that day? It wasn't Hill because he was out. Schumacher, I think it was, because he was on appeal from his ban at from the British Grand Prix. Bernard, very capable driver, but not the best. Behind Atwood, ahead of Alguersuari, I think is fair. Jules Bianchi obviously died while racing. The last F1 driver to die. Hopefully the last one to die ever, but there's the last one to die up until date. That's who, whilst actively driving, there have been drivers who've died since then who were like, obviously, who were there since the 50s and 60s. And later still. Ahead of Schumacher, ahead of Giovinazzi, ahead of Zhou, ahead of Boldi, ahead of Tsunoda, ahead of Baghetti, ahead of Anderson, ahead of Badoa, ahead of Alguersuari, ahead of Bernard, ahead of Atwood, ahead of Gefford, ahead of Ireland, ahead of Scarfiotti, Bonnier, ahead... Oh... People are going to be absolutely on me for that, for saying that Jules Bianchi is worse than Lance Stroll. I mean, this is one of my unpopular F1 opinions. I believe that Jules Bianchi wasn't really that special. He was good, yes. He wasn't bad. I'm not saying he was awful and people just overhyped him way too much. But in my opinion, at least, Jules Bianchi, he only ever had one good result in his entire career. Like, people only think of Monaco in 2014, and they don't think of any other result. And that Monaco result, the only reason he ever got that was because he barged Kobayashi out of the way. And I do think that was an illegal move. He gave Kobayashi damage from a move that he caused. And, yeah. His teammate was Max Chilton, so maybe if he had a more competent teammate and he was beating him as regularly as he was with Chilton, I'd be a bit more generous. But when your yardstick is Max Chilton and you're beating him, it's like, wow, do you want a medal? Mark Blundell. I think an American commentator made a joke that the Japanese guys would have struggle telling the difference between Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell, who were teammates at Ligier at the time, because they can't pronounce their L's and R's, or they pronounce their R's like their L's, or something stupid like that. That joke wouldn't fly today, but I'm just pointing out that it existed. I don't know why he's in here, to be honest. He got a couple of podiums in the mid-90s, but overall was just an average driver, good yardstick. Probably on the same level as Tsunoda, to be fair. Ahead of Baghetti, probably. And that's probably where I'd go for him. Felice Bonetto, a driver who got a couple of podiums in the early 50s, like 50 and 51 and 52. I mean, ahead of Ireland, ahead of Scarfiotti, ahead of Bonnier, not as better than Bianchi, better than Stroll, better than Brambilla. Brambilla's a bit high, to be fair. He's not as good as Taruffi, I'll put him there. Brambilla needs to be brought down a peg. So does Mass. So does Kovalainen. There we go, that's probably a bit fairer. Bourdais, Sebastian Bourdais. Sebastian Bourdais. Midfield driver. Did 1.5 seasons with Toro Rosso. Could have done better. He was unlucky in 2008 and was just a bit shit in 2009. Where's Alguersuari? Because I'll put him around where he is. There. Not as good as Badoa. Martin Brundle. Martin Brundle is a interesting case. Obviously, multiple podiums, never got a win. Never led a lap even, never mind got a win. Obviously more known for his punditry now. But I think in his day he was a very capable driver. I do think he was not as good as Gunnar Nilsson, but I think he was better than the likes of Gasly and Ocon. Nowadays, very much a good midfield driver. We still have 30, 40, 60... We still have about 120 to go, 100 to go. Buemi, same as Alguersuari. I think he was better than Alguersuari was, though. Because although I think Alderweireld got a couple of 6th and 7th places. I think Buemi got a highest result of like 8th, but he was more consistent because he was older and had a bit more experience. Alex Caffey, he was known for backmarker teams in the 80s, so it's a bit hard to judge him. I think he was probably better than Baghetti, but not as good as Blundell. Ivan Capelli, he got a couple of podiums in the late 80s, early 90s with Leighton House. Moved to Ferrari in 92. That move never worked out for him. It was a career ender, really. Moved to Jordan in 93 and then retired midway through the season. There, probably ahead of Gasly but behind Brundle. Eugenio Castellotti, gone too soon, died testing at Modena in 57. And got his 1 pole position at Spa in 55. Got a couple of podiums. Never got a win, unfortunately. But I think he can definitely go into the B tier. Better than Jabouille, not as good as Beloff. Jesus Christ, I've got so many to go. Eddie Cheever, a lot of podiums in the 80s. Very capable driver. Good upper midfield driver. The Sergio Perez of his day, really. If we talk, actually, maybe the Nick Heidfeld of his day is more appropriate. A solid upper midfield driver you can depend on to get an odd podium every season or two. So I'd probably put him in this tier ahead of Nilsson. No, behind Nilsson, because Nilsson was actually really good. Cheever was better than Brundle. Louis Chiron, again, if this was not just F1 but all motorsport, because obviously pre-war Grand Prix exists, Louis Chiron would be up right near the top, but otherwise he was too old to really be successful in F1. He was born in the 1890s. I think he would have been like he retired fully when he was like 58 or 59. He tried to make a couple of starts at the Monaco Grand Prix when he was like coming up to his 60s. But he had made his last start at 55. He's the oldest driver ever, and that record will never be broken. I think I can put him on a similar level to Bianchi. No, I can't, because he only got like 1 podium. I think the only podium he got in F1 was the 1950 Monaco Grand Prix. So I'd probably put him there. Again, if this was including their pre-war results for all of the pre-war, all the like your Fangios and your Farinas, I would probably put him higher, but I don't know enough. First of all, I don't know enough about pre-war Grand Prix racing to fairly judge, and second of all, it says F1 drivers all-time tier list. Eric Comas, another midfield driver, similar to Eric Bernard, so I'll put him in there. Same first name, similar careers. Pierre's Courage, did a video on him. He did Frank Williams racing cars for a couple of years until he died at the Dutch Grand Prix. Got lots of talent, never really got to show it, so probably around where Taruffi, Bonetto, that kind of range. I'm trying to speed through these so we can get towards some of the more juicy ones. Yannick Dalmas, I don't care. I don't care about Yannick Dalmas. We can go along with Baldi. Derek Daly, again, I don't care. You can go along with them. Christian Dano was a bit better, to be fair to him. You can go at the back end of this one. Andre De Cesaris, here we go. Here's a more interesting driver. At his peak, he was a very good driver. Crashed too often to actually get anything. He was also in a lot of backmarker teams. Not as good as Gasly, not as good as Albon, not as good as Ocon, not as good as Pache, not as good as Trulli. He was probably better than Maldonado because he was able to, like people call him a crash-prone nutjob and say, oh, he retired from 16 races in a row, not realising that most of those were mechanical. So yeah, he wasn't as crash-prone as people remember him as. Dalla Rosa, one-time podium finisher, 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix. Another midfield-ish driver, mainly a test driver to be fair, but was still good. Pedro Diniz, mediocre. He can go below Schumacher, ahead of Alio. Paul Di Resta. See, people shit on Paul Di Resta now because of how bad he was as a pundit. But as a driver, he's really good. He's won Le Mans, I think. He did a couple of seasons with Force India, came back with Williams in 2017 for one race, and did actually perform not embarrassingly bad. So I think he's better than a lot of people think he is because of his punditry. He's better than Geffen, better than Chiron, better than Ireland, better than Scarfiotti. That's probably where I'd draw the line. Mark Donoghue, another driver gone too soon. I can't remember which teams he drove for, but he died at the 1975 Austrian Grand Prix, or at least in testing or practice or something at that event. Very capable driver. He's up with Stefan Beloff, people like that. Probably up in here. Marcus Ericsson. D-tier. Probably worse than Diniz, but ahead of Alio. Christian Fittipaldi. The best of the Fittipaldi drivers who aren't Emerson, who have competed in F1. Probably better than Sonoda, better than Baghetti, better than Caffey, and that's where I probably draw. Actually, better than Blundell, and I probably draw a line there. Bertrand Gachot had potential, and then he sprayed some CS gas in a taxi driver's face. That pretty much sums up his F1 career, because after that he went to LaRousse and then Pacific and a couple of other shitebox teams. There we go. Howden Ganley. 70s kind of midfield driver. Nothing really much to his career, if I'm being frankly honest. He goes there. Actually, no, I'm going to put Baghetti ahead of him. He wasn't that special. Olivier Jean de Bion. Up here, probably around where Panis and Courage are. He is quite underrated. Because he's one of those Belgian drivers that got podiums in the late 50s. Your Paul Freres, your Willy Mariessas, I'm trying to think of Andre Pillet. I don't think he ever got a podium, but there were a lot of drivers who represented Belgium who got points back in the day. Piercarlo Ginzani. Why? He's just average. He's ahead of Baldi, but he's average. Bruno Giacomelli got one pole position at where was it? He got pole position at, was it Watkins Glen in 19? It might have been Watkins Glen in 1980, and then he got his one podium finish at Caesar's Palace in 81, I think. A good midfield-ish driver. Probably put him around where Kovalainen and Mass are. Yep. Timo Glock, or as Richard Hammond knows him, Tim O'Glock. Thinks he's Irish for some reason. Probably best friends with Bertrand Gachot, just because of his name. And obviously Bertrand Gachot likes weapons. I mean, Christian Horner likes weapons. He just likes showing off his weapons to people, people he shouldn't. But where am I putting Glock? I'm all over the place now because I'm trying to make fucking jokes that aren't funny. Better than De Cesare is, but not as good as Trulli. Maston Gregory, an American pioneer in F1, you could say. He's up with wherever Harry Schell is, if I can find him. He would be in a similar sort of place, because I kind of group those two together. I'll put him up with Jean de Bion. Gregory, then Jean de Bion. Romain Grosjean, a lot of podiums. He's got like 10 podiums in F1, or 9 I think it is. Very capable. People know him for crashing because they have the memory of a goldfish. Anything after like 2017, 2018 pretty much ruined his career or ruined his reputation. He was good in 2016, good in 2015, good in 2014 in a shit car. Very good in Lotus in 2013. He wasn't as good as Raikkonen, but Raikkonen was really good in that Lotus. 2012 had his moments of shitness, but he was overall average, you could say. Obviously, he made his full-time debut in 2012, but 2009 was his first year, but I'm not going to hold anything he did in 2009 against him because he was not experienced enough. Olivier Griard is up here because I've seen, apparently, I think he got his Osella into like the top 10 or something in qualifying in Mexico one year when no one expected that Arcella to even get onto the grid, and he was getting into the top 15. He was lost potential. I think he was an F3000 champion and he never got to show his potential. Mauricio Gugelmin got one podium, I think it was in Brazil in '89, and got a fastest lap somewhere. I think he got a fastest lap in the French Grand Prix in 1990 where his teammate did so well. Probably about there, behind Kovalainen and ahead of Mass. Gutierrez was shit, apart from in Suzuka 2013 when he was okay. He was worse than Ericsson, but better than Alio. Mike Halewood, Mike the Bike, we called him because he drove bikes as well, and I think he got a championship on a bike as well, to be fair. About here seems right. Maybe ahead of DeResta, so I don't get attacked by fans of a certain age. Halewood ahead of DeResta, behind Brambia. Brendan Hartley. Good, again, another driver who was good in other series but wasn't in F1. Better than Ericsson, better than Gutierrez, better than Diniz just about, but not as good as Schumacher. Actually, no, because he didn't crash the car all the time, but he's not as good as Hartley. Sorry, he's not as good as Giovinazzi. Heidfeld, I just need to check how many I've got. I've got enough to fill a page, that's good. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, about 80 left. Heidfeld. Where are we looking up here? He's probably ahead of Ralf Schumacher, but behind Daniel Ricciardo. Because although he never got a race win, he was very good. Actually, no, I'm going to bring him down because he never got a race win. He's not as good as Revson, but I think he's better than Lacey. He was unlucky not to get a race win. He should have got a race win. He got multiple pole positions. Hans Hermann, that's spelt wrong. It's supposed to have 2 R's. Hans Hermann. Mercedes driver in the 50s. And it's him driving a Porsche in the 60s when they were a constructor. Okay, so him and Carl Kling. I think I've already put Kling. Have I already put Kling on the... I think I've already put Kling down. So if I can find where Kling is, I'll put him in the exact same position because they're both very similar. No, maybe I haven't. Maybe I haven't put him on yet. Oh, there he is. There's Carl Kling. I haven't put him on yet. Oh, where have I put Herman now? For fuck's sake, I've forgotten where he is. There. Actually, to be fair, that was about the place I'd probably put him anyway. Behind Mass, ahead of Giacomelli. Hulkenberg, one of the best drivers never to get a podium, if not the best driver to never get a podium. And it wasn't always his fault when he didn't get a podium. Like, for example, Monaco 2016, he was stuffed over with strategy when he could have got a podium. Let's go for... He's ahead of... Not ahead of Donahue. He's not ahead of Beltoise, so he drops down into this tier. He's better than Gasly and Albon over his entire career, but I don't think he's better than... Actually, I do think he's better than Capelli over his career. Switch those two round. Jarier, he was the first... This is a fun trivia fact. Despite all the success that France had in the 50s, Jean-Pierre Jarier was the first French driver to get a pole position in F1 in 1974. And I'd probably put him ahead of Giacomelli, ahead of Herman, ahead of Mass, ahead of Gugelmin, ahead of Bianchi, ahead of Stroll, ahead of Bonetto, ahead of Taruffi, ahead of Della Rosa, ahead of Courage. Keep going, keep going, keep going. That's where I'd probably stop the line. Jan Magnussen, not Kevin. He's that very average at best. Probably there behind Ginzani ahead of Baldi. Stefan Johansson, I think does he have the second most podiums without a race win, or is Lando Norris taking that now? I think he might have done. I think actually Lando Norris is first, Heidfeld is second, and now Johansson is third. Why am I moving Bianchi around, for fuck's sake? Where was he supposed to go? I can't remember where Bianchi was supposed to go. Fuck. I'm going to have to re-rank him. Actually, I do remember now. There we go. Johansson can go there ahead of Nannini. There we go. Jolyon Palmer, average at best. Ahead of Gutierrez. Or is he? Yeah, I'll put him ahead of Gutierrez. But he's still a D-tier driver. Karthikeyan, E-tier. Worse than Albers. Better than Latifi because he did get points. Admittedly, it wasn't a fraudulent race. His peaks were okay. And his... Actually, no, I'll put him below Latifi because although his peaks were okay, Latifi's peaks were also okay. And his lows were really low, like Karthikeyan is worse with awful. Ukyo Katayama, actually quite underrated to be fair. Got a couple of 4th places, a couple of 5th places. Honda engine bitches, I like to call them, or Japanese engine bitch, I like to call them, because people like him, Aguri Suzuki, Satoru Nakajima, Kazuki Nakajima only ever got their F1 seats, or at least good ones, because they had Japanese engine suppliers backing them, so Japanese engine bitches. He's better than Chiron, but not better than Ireland. Christine Clean, or Clean, or however you say it. Out of F1 too soon, I think. He was a good midfield driver who could just put in a good performance in the midfield, probably like Christian Danner. So let's put him in there. Carl Kling, put him up with Hans Hermann. Wherever Hans Hermann I put him. Where did I put Hans Hermann? Where have I put Hans Hermann? I'm making myself look like a stupid idiot, but because I am. But where have I put him? Don't tell me I put him in this tier, because he doesn't belong in here if he is here. Hold on. There he is. I'll put Kling ahead of Hermann. Nakajima, that's Kazuki Nakajima, not Satoru. Better than his dad, but still not great. I'll probably put him ahead of Ginzani, probably leading the D tier is probably good for him. Kobayashi, one of the most underrated drivers. I mean, he's cliche underrated now because everyone's like, oh my god, look how good he was at overtaking. Oh my god, he should have stayed in F1, and he should have stayed in F1. To be fair to him, but money rules the world. So, better than Maldonado, better than Jarier, better than De Cesaris, better than Glock, better than Trulli. Not as good as Pache though. There we go, that's where I draw my line in the sand. Kvyat, another good underrated driver. I'll probably put him on a similar level to Kobayashi, to be fair. Where have I just put him? Where have I put Kvyat? I've just lost him. I've lost another driver in the fucking wilderness that is this fucking tier list. There he is. He's on a similar level to Kobayashi, to be fair. Not as good as Trulli, though. Larini got one podium in the Ferrari. Overall, probably a bit underrated. But I'd probably put him on a similar level to Griard or Danner. Leto, similar level to Larini. One podium. Admittedly, it was in a Dallara. But the thing is, he did better in a Dallara than he did in a Benetton, which makes no sense. Stuart Lewis Evans. I want to do a video on this guy at some point. 2 pole positions I think he got. Never got a win. I think he got a couple of fastest laps. Died at the Moroccan Grand Prix in '58. Definitely untapped potential there. I think put him on a similar level to Mark Donoghue. Vitantonio Liuzzi, average driver. Why is he in here? Put him in there, leading the D tier. Brett Lung, why the fuck is he in here? The only thing he's known for is being part of the guys that saved Niki Lauda. But as a driver, he was just average. He was better than Gutierrez, Palmer, and Ericsson, but come on. Tony Maggs, okay, here we go. An actual good driver who's not just going to go into D tier as an obscure one. The first good African driver in F1, obviously from South Africa or Rhodesia or whatever you call whatever South Africa was in that era, that age. No, it wasn't from Rhodesia. What am I talking about? That's John Love I'm talking about. Anyway, can you tell I'm losing it by this point in the video? Ahead of Bonetto, behind Taruffi, Kevin Magnussen, or if you played Apex or Racing Manager or whatever it was called back in the day on iPhone, Bevan Magnet. One podium and then faded off into obscurity. I think there is probably fair. No, Bob Anderson. Bob Anderson needs to come down as well. Magnussen is better than Badoa. He's better than Bourdais. He's better than Alguersuari. He's better than Comas. Or is he? I want to switch those two around as well. Actually, I'm going to switch a lot of them around. Why is Mike Parks there? Oh, fuck's sake. I've messed up this a bit. There we go. Robert Manzon, very good driver. One of the more underrated drivers of the early 50s. Obviously, I think that's him driving a... That's not a Talbot Lago, but it is one of the other French cars. I can't seem to remember what their fucking name is. Better than Bonetto, better than Mags, better than Taruffi. No, he isn't. I've just decided. Pierluigi Martini, Minardi stalwart, which is why everyone loves him. He stayed with Minardi when no one else did. Better than Badoa, better than Alguersuari and Buemi. Not as good as Richard Atwood, though, in my opinion. Arturo Mezzario. I did a podcast with Peter Brook and Nav F1 about this guy. So I should know about him, but he goes in here. C tier, right towards the back. Modena or Modena or however the fuck you're going to call him. Stefano Modena or Modena. I'll probably say Modena because it's easier. And I can just rattle off the syllables like a fucking bumbling wreck of a person I am. Yeah, you know. Again, untapped potential. F3000 champion. Very, very, very good driver. Modena goes ahead of Comas. Sorry, behind Comas, ahead of Magnussen. That's Kevin Magnussen. Thiago Montero, where the fuck is he on here? Most irrelevant driver ever. Still better than Mick Schumacher, though. Gianni Morbidelli. There, I guess. Roberto Moreno. Hold on. This is what Aidan Millward's going to be like in a couple of years' time, or days' time, or however long it's going to be until he gets a fucking 100,000 subscribers. Roberto Moreno is the best F1 driver of all time. But to be serious, he was very good in those lower back marker and lower midfielder cars. To the point where I think he deserves to be in C tier, B tier, just on principle. Even though he didn't get as many results, his results in lower machinery were amazing, and I do think that people completely disregard that. Felipe Nasr, very good driver, didn't get the potential. He's like Pascal Wehrlein. I think we'll see him later, who didn't get enough time in a good car or in any decent car to be able to show himself. Which is why I think he goes near the top of C tier. He was definitely better than Jules Bianchi, I can say that for sure. He was better than Maldonado. He was better than... No, he wasn't better than Jarier. That's where I'll draw my line. Jackie Oliver, known for that crash with Jackie Ickx in Drama in 1970. But overall, wasn't really that good. He was better than Richard Atwood, though. Jonathan Palmer was just about as bad as Jolyon Palmer. Probably a little bit better. I'll put him up with these kind of midfield drivers that I don't give a shit about from the 80s. Henri Pescarolo, he always seems to crop up in my videos because he's a driver in the 70s who was out and about. Ahead of Bonnier, behind Giacomelli is probably fair. Remember, this is F1 only, not Le Mans, where he won 6 times. So before people crucify me for putting Henri Pescarolo in a place where he doesn't belong. Vitaly Petrov was good in Renault-ish. He had his moments. He got podium in Malaysia 2011. Or was that Heidfeld? It was Australia 2011. It was Australia 2011 where Petrov got his podium. Halewood is behind Halewood. PK Jr., where is D tier? Because he belongs in it. He wasn't that good. Pirot. I don't know much about Emanuele Pirot. I know he drove for Benetton for like a race or two. I know he drove for... Is that Dallara in that picture? It's not Ferrari because he never drove for Ferrari. Or maybe Arrows. I don't fucking know. Is he the first guy to go in the question mark category? No. I think putting him in C tier with Olivier Guyard is fair. Tom Price. He could absolutely butcher the field on his day, but then he got butchered. So, yeah, or he butchered a Marshall, but he more lost potential, better than Jabouille. I'll probably put him there because it's a balance of potential and what actually happened. Hector Rabak is right down here. Worse than Carl Vercaen in my opinion, but not as bad as Mazepin. Louis Rosier. About here. Mika Salo, quite underrated because he did well when driving for Ferrari in '99. Ahead of Gasho, ahead of Caffey, ahead of Blundell, behind Fittipaldi, I think. Roy Salvadori, a podium finisher in the late 50s, another one of these fuckers. Behind Ireland, ahead of... Can you tell I'm just trying to rush through these, by the way? Because I want to get to the actual good drivers. I don't think there's any much of them left, but I want to get through to more interesting drivers. Other ones that are just a bit average, I just put in a position and move on. Sato, or Sato, whatever you want to say, Takuma Sato. One podium at Indy in 04. Better than Sonoda, better than Ganley, better than Baghetti. No, he's not, actually. No, he is. My old university lecturer used to work at BAR, and every single chance he got, he used to talk about how bad Takuma Sato was, or how bad he thought he was, which is unfair because I've heard from Eddie, not personally from Eddie Jordan, but I've heard from Eddie Jordan's podcast that he is a very nice person. So I think it's a bit harsh. Maston Gregory and Harry Schell go together. Tim Schenken, another good podium finisher from that era, probably around here. Bruno Senna, he's up with like Mick Schumacher. Actually, he's probably better than Mick Schumacher, better than Montero, better than Hartley, but not as good as Gio. Satoru Nakajima. Probably leads D tier quite nicely. Mike Spence, along with Mike Park, was one of those pole sitters in the late 60s. I'll put him up there with each other. Rolf Stommelen, we're going to go for probably around Schenken, maybe just ahead. Philippe Streiff, another mediocre podium finisher from this era, not from the 70s, but from the 80s. I think he got one in 85, driving for Renault. Or Ligier, it might have been, actually. There we go. Hans-Joachim Stuck, the son of Hans Stuck, who we might get to in a minute when we do pre-war drivers. I don't care at this point. It's just random drivers from the 70s. Mark Schurer, even more obscure because he never got a podium. There you go. Adrian Sutil, actually quite underrated, so I'm going to put him higher up than I would have usually. Aguri Suzuki. shit most of the time and then got good in Japan one year. Tarquini, most DNQs of any driver. Trevor Taylor. Podium finisher in the late 60s. Let's go up here. Better than Richard Atwood behind Jackie Oliver. Teo Fabi or whatever you call him. 3 pole positions. I saw an annoying video on YouTube Shorts earlier on, or the other day, saying, oh, the worst driver, or the most biggest bottle job in F1 history, Teo Fabi, because he had 3 pole positions and never led a lap. Well, if you actually look at the races, you cabbage, you'd find that most of it, like, yes, fair enough, he bottled the start in 85 at the Nürburgring, but he was on pole in a Tollman. Well, how do you expect him to keep the lead? And then in 86 in Austria, he lost the lead, but then got it back and then retired with an engine failure. And then in 86, Italy, he had a mechanical fault and he had to start from the back of the grid. Again, not his fault. So he only had 1 real pole position. And he would have led a lap if he did not had an engine failure. So he didn't bottle anything at all, you stupid cabbage. Anyway, probably behind Mike Spencer, ahead of Paul di Resta. Stoffel Van Dorn, more lost potential. Still better than Mick Schumacher though. And Montero and Hartley and Senna and Gio, but not as good as Joe. Verne is up there with these kind of guys. He can kick it with Clean, Sonoda. I'll probably put him there, ahead of Ganley maybe as well for good measure. Jos Verstappen. He could beat the competition on his day. Oh no, he couldn't actually. He can beat his wife on his day, but he can't beat the competition at all. The only thing he can do is literally alienate every single person he ever meets. Or he could leave them at a petrol station if he doesn't like to. If he doesn't like them. That's actually probably quite fair. No, not what I said. That's funny and satire. So don't sue me, Jos. And if you do, I'll just pull a truth defence on you, twat. Anyway, by the way, what I'm saying here, this doesn't reflect on any of the drivers related to them. So I'm not a Hamilton fan. I'm not a Max fan. I'm a neutral. Just want to get that out of the way before anyone says, "Oh, you hate Max because you say but Jos Verstappen is this and Jos Verstappen that." No, I say Jos Verstappen is something. I don't say Max is something. I put Max up in the S tier. I'm not putting him in F tier because he's a cheat. Because he's not. Stupid lemons. I'm just talking. I'm so done with this tier list. I'm talking to imaginary people to make up points that don't exist. Oh, great. You've got to love me, haven't you? Why do you follow this channel? Probably because you're massive nerds like me and you just want someone to talk to so you don't shout into the void and kill your entire family. Anyway, Derek Warwick. There. Pascal Wehrlein. Up here somewhere when you see it, wave or cheer. About there, I'd say. Carl Wendlinger. I finally got near the end of this video. Yay! Sorry guys, by the way, if you're like watching and you're really into this and you're like, why is he so bored? It's because I've been recording for ages, that's why. Manfred Winkelhock, not Marcus Winkelhock. On a similar level to Mauro Baldi, if I know where he is. There. Rain Wissel. I don't know how you can pronounce Swedish names, surprisingly. I mean, he did get a podium, so maybe put him a bit higher. Maybe put him ahead of Tarquini. Alex Wurz, actually a really good driver, to be fair. To be fair to him, he was. Oh, I've lost someone again. Oh, no, I haven't. Never mind. Probably put him up here with Halewood and Brambilla. Alex Zanardi. Oh, Alex Zanardi's a hard one to judge because he was all right in Lotus and in BMS Scuderia Italia in 91 and 93 respectively. But then 99 Williams, which is what everyone knows him for, in F1 circles, let me add, because he was half decent in IndyCar and then got his legs torn off in Euro Lausitz Ring. But overall in F1 he was a bit average. Put him along with Wendlinger or Wendlinger. Oh, we've got pre-war drivers now. See, I'll rank the ones I can, because I know some of these pre-war guys. Rudolph Caracciola. Obviously, not like he was part of not one of the greatest regimes in politics history, but I can't hold that against him. He's definitely one of the greatest. Not up here, I don't think. I think I'll probably put him around the Peterson level. Who's next? Herman Lang. Probably similar level. Herman Lang was more experienced. I know, obviously, because did Caracciola die while driving? I don't think he did. I think he just about survived into the 50s. And then, I don't know if he died while driving in the 50s, but I know he didn't die in his prime, is what I'm trying to say. Herman Lang can go ahead of Caracciola because I know he was more experienced. I don't know who this Mole guy is. I don't know who Muller is. I know who Nuvolari is because I think he's one of the greatest of all time. I'll probably put him third behind Clark and Fangio. Rosemeyer, he did die while driving, and he died while trying a land speed record. Don't know why he tried land speed record in the 1930s, because you get your fucking head face torn off. Or head, or body, or torn limb from limb, because that's how fucking graphic those crashes were back in the day. Probably put them, again, I'm probably going to group these three together, because I don't know enough about them. Dick Seaman, although he's got a really funny name, I only know that he wouldn't like Brooklands once. Hans Stuck, who I mentioned earlier, don't know enough about him. Achille Varzi, don't know enough about him. Manfred von Brautich, don't know enough about him. Jean-Pierre Vimille. See, I know their names, but I don't know anything about their careers. That's a problem. Antonio Ascari, the father of Alberto. Ben Wast, don't know. I don't know. Don't know his first name. Oh, fucking Campari, yes. I do know him. He was 1920s through to the 30s, but I don't know his name. Who the fuck are you? He must be Dutch with that name. How can all of the letters in your name, apart from one, be fucking syllables? Knief. Anyway, De Palma, I don't know him. Albert Devo, I know him because of the Bugatti cars. Giuseppe Giappone. I've been starting an Excel document to try and get myself knowledgeable on pre-war racing, and I know he was a pioneer. He was in the 1900, like 1905 to like 1910 was when he came in. Jules Gou, don't know him. I know the name, I don't know the driver. Fernandinho Minoya, don't know him. I know Felice Nazaro, but I know I've only done him until like 1908 in my pre-war kind of Excel document, and I don't know enough about him. And Henry Seagrave, don't know enough about him. I know, again, I think he won at Brooklands like once. So that's it. I'm not going to go back through, because some YouTubers do is they go, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to look and see how wrong I am because of some opinions. But I feel like I'm going to fall asleep if I don't stop here right now. So that's my tier list for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. So you can see Clark, Fangio, Nuvolari, Prost, Schumacher, Lauda, Senna, Hamilton, Alonso, Hill, Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart, Max Verstappen, Jack Brabham, Moss, Mansell, Hill, Hakkinen, PK, Vettel. Those are the drivers in my top tier. I'm not going to go through every single driver in every single tier, because I'll be sat here for 5 years talking about drivers that no one can give less shits about. I'll slowly scroll through the tiers so that everyone can make their own opinions, because I know this camera is in the way, so if anyone wants to have a look and see where their driver is or where their favourite driver is, I will slowly scroll through them for you all now. But after this, after my unscripted video, it will be the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it, because this has taken a long time to record. I know it's probably not going to get many views because of how long it is, and I'll save, or I will. There we go. No, I don't care about logging in. There we go. So I'll save that, and I will put it probably as the thumbnail, or as part of the thumbnail. I'm not gonna do... Oh, what am I doing? Ah! We're safe. We're safe. I'm not gonna touch anything else. So yeah, I've been Nedzo. And I'll see you all. Can I enlarge my screen for this bit? Hold on. I'm Nedzo. And I'll... I'm Nedzo. And I'll see you all later. Bye! How the fuck do I end this thing? Ah! There we are.